Hello and welcome to the Barcast. I'm your host, Nick Barr, coming to you on a muggy Thursday morning here in New York. Today I want to jump right into a practice that I've found super powerful, super helpful, and one that you maybe haven't heard of. It's called the Inner Triangle. Credit to this goes to the IFS Institute and in particular Tony Herbine Blank. I learned about this practice through IFS training materials. And if you don't know IFS, internal family systems, that's okay. I think you can still get some value out of this practice, but I'll just do a little bit of framing before we jump in. First of all, this is a powerful practice, and so please only do this when you feel like you've got the time and the energy and the resources to do some deep inner work. And this inner work will kind of depend on a few concepts. One concept is the concept of the part. So this practice depends on you having a relationship to yourself that involves accessing parts of yourself. Part of me wants to do this, but part of me wants to do that. There's this other part that's scared, right? So this practice is relying on your openness and willingness to access parts of yourself. So that's one piece. The other piece is this practice also depends on your access to what IFS calls self, or other traditions might call your soul or your truth, or your natural awareness, some resource inside of you where you can say, okay, now this isn't a part, this is true. And from this true place, you experience compassion, curiosity, caring, openness. So you're going to need to access some parts, and you're going to need to access some self to participate in this practice. And if that all feels new or weird, totally fine. If you're interested, IFS is a great place to start to kind of do that groundwork. So with that out of the way, we're going to get right into the inner triangle. So the inner triangle is a really helpful practice for times in your life where you're having trouble making a decision, where you feel torn between X or Y, and you don't know how to move forward. Or maybe you're frustrated about that situation, or feeling anxious, or scared, or defeated. And I'm going to walk us through an example from my life where I've used the inner triangle, and then we'll do a meditation. So I would recommend, as you do this, don't pick the biggest, hardest decision in your life. Pick something small, because you'll probably get to the same place anyway. So for me, I have a lot of unstructured days recently, kind of in exploration mode. And so rather than my days being really well defined, a lot of days I wake up and I say, like, well, what should I work on today? And it's been giving me some stress, because there are a lot of things I could do. I could write a blog post, I could record a video like this one, I could learn something new, I could be reaching out to people, I could be developing my own practices, and all of these options are sort of competing for my attention, and I get frustrated. I get sort of agitated. I don't know what to do. This guy here is sort of capturing that hot, frustrated part for me. And for you, if you have these kinds of things, you might have a different kind of reaction. You might feel stressed or tired or something else. For me, there's agitation. And so there's a lot of pressure on this agitated part. This agitated part is the one who has to decide what it is that I'm going to do, and I can do it. And it just makes this agitated part even more agitated because to some extent he's gotten a raw deal. He's been forced into a decision, into a role. You figure out what we're going to do, that he actually can't make that decision. He can in the short term, and what happens to me oftentimes is say, okay, I'll do this, and I sort of move through a task in a tight, agitated mode, and that ends up not helping me achieve whatever the goal was in the first place for doing that work. So this is one node of the inner triangle. This is the part of me that has to make a decision. But to illuminate the rest of the inner triangle, we want to start feeling our way into, well, what are some of the things that I could do, right? What are these other voices that are in my inner world? And there's one part that I'm familiar with that's kind of a younger part. Maybe he's in the library, he's surrounded by books, and he just sort of wants to disappear into his books. He wants to disappear into the library. He loves learning. And just, if he could, he'd just spend all day reading. It's okay, so I can feel that wish in there. And as soon as I feel that wish, there's a response from another part. But I need to get out there. I mean, I need to make a living. I need to build relationships. People need to know about what I'm doing. Can't just spend all day in the library. You got to get out there and connect. So now my inner triangle is starting to illuminate. I'm feeling that other part, and these two parts are what IFS would call polarized. They're in conflict with each other. And in that polarization, I'm starting to get that agitation come up as well. So the young part, yeah, we could get out there, but I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like I can't just go out there and schmooze and BS my way through life. I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to develop some expertise, and then we can start talking to people. Yeah, but you're just making excuses to avoid people. You're introverted and avoidant. We got to get out there. That's how we learn. And what's the point of learning by yourself? You want to learn with others. And the polarization is happening. This back and forth is happening. The agitation is happening. And so at this point, I've sort of lit up. I've illuminated my inner triangle. And this isn't my only inner triangle. I have who knows how many inner triangles, but this is the inner triangle that's illuminating for that initial question, what should I do today? And so just naming these parts. On the one hand, there's the let's get quiet, go inward, let's learn, kind of a boyish part. There's sort of the schmoozy, let's get out there, let's impress part. They're in conflict with each other. Yes, no, in, out, in, out. And then there's a third part that feels like it has to decide what to do. And it's angry, it's agitated. So just doing this work is really valuable and challenging. I think the value is it starts to loosen the hold that the decision-making question has on you. You can start to feel like, oh wow, okay, yeah, there's a lot going on here. And it gives you a little bit of distance from the contents of the decision-making framework and lets you see that there's actually sort of various parts involved, all with their wishes for us, as well as their limitations, the beliefs that limit us or the things that they don't see that we do see. And so the work from here is to ask that decider, in my case, the agitated part, if it would step aside and let us come in. S here is for self. Let the self come in and come in a different way, actually to hear out what each of these parts wants us to know and to understand them more fully and to move forward from there. When people do this work or when I share it with them, sometimes people ask like, so is the point of this work to make a decision? No, not really. It might be the case that a way forward does become clear to you after this work, but that way forward often looks not like A or B, not like yes or no. it often looks like a more complete understanding of the situation. And sometimes from that complete understanding of the situation, neither A nor B become as significant as they maybe once seemed. So I think I would say that I would describe this practice as very helpful for decision making, but rarely will it deliver A or B. Maybe that's not fair to say rarely. I don't. I guess I don't know enough about this practice to know kind of what the numbers are. I would say I would recommend it for any difficult decision, any difficult situation you're in, um, but don't expect to kind of resolve your original doubt in the way that maybe you're thinking right now. That's my caveat. So with that context out of the way, we've illuminated an inner triangle, and at this point you should have kind of illuminated an inner triangle for your own situation. And now we're going to do what's called the two hands meditation. Again, this is Tony Herbine Blank's, where we're going to move into self and learn about these two parts. I'm going to do this part of the practice, this meditation, in a open, neutral way, so that I'm taking my situation out now. And what follows this meditation is something that hopefully you can use anytime for any difficult situation. Okay, so we're going to begin the meditation. We'll just settle in with a few deep breaths. Any stretching you need to do, just relaxing your face, any other muscles you notice are tight. You can leave your eyes open or close them. And as we're breathing, we're just going to come into contact with our inner triangle. We're going to see if we're aware of two parts that get into conflict when we're trying to make a decision about something, or parts that pull us in opposite directions. And the first thing we're going to do is see if we can actually find those parts inside of us. Begin feeling the energy of those parts. Noticing who's coming up first, who's coming up second, who's fast, who's slow, maybe even colors or heat or cold associated with these parts. So just take a minute to feel into that energy and invite that energy to come out, to come forward. And as we're feeling into these two voices, also just take a moment to notice if there's a third part that's getting involved that wants to mediate, wants to help make the decision, maybe wants to speed up this process, feels anxious about the conflict, feels skeptical about the whole practice. So just breathing space into this, we have our two parts that are in conflict and a third part that's mediating. I mean, we have some other parts too. Any other parts that are coming up. And what we're going to do now is acknowledge the mediating part, acknowledge any helping parts or skeptical parts, and ask them if they'd be open for the rest of this meditation to step aside. because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get to know these two parts that are in conflict, so that we can do inquiry and be present to this polarization, to this conflict, to this opposition, so that we can help all parts and help the whole system. So once those parts are willing to step aside and relax, then we're going to just come back to these two parts, these two opposing parts. And just checking if we're in self. That is to say, if we have enough energy where we feel genuinely curious, open, just wanting to learn, not trying to fix or change anything, just being present. Once we feel that way, then we're going to turn our palms up on our lap. And we're going to invite those parts to bring their energy right into our hands, so that we can really see them and be in relationship to them. So go ahead and do that. And again, just noticing which part lands on which hand. Maybe the weight of each part. And noticing how we feel toward each part, just extending some energy to both of them, letting them know that we're here, that we're going to be listening to both of them, paying attention to both of them, present for both of them and what they have to say. And once we've done that, let's just see who would like to go first. Maybe one part is already ready to speak up. And before we go deeper, let's just let the other part know that we're going to come back to it. We're here for both. So let's focus our attention on the part that wants to go first, and let's just invite it to tell us about itself. What does it do? What its job is? See if we can just listen. What its intentions are. And really listen for wisdom. What does it know that it wants us to know? What are its hopes for us? And if it feels right, what are its fears for us? What is it afraid will happen if we don't listen to it, or if it stopped doing its job, what would happen? And once we've received that, we really want to validate it, that we understand it, and that it makes sense, that it does what it does. Checking to see if we have any judgment about this part, and if we do, just again asking that judging part to step aside. for this exercise, and we can come back to it later. So once we have an understanding of this part, its role, why it does what it does, what its hopes for us are, what its fears are, we might even ask it if it's protecting anybody that it wants us to know about. And let's just send it some appreciation for sharing in this context, and let it know that we're going to move on to the other part now. And before we do, if there's anything it wants us to know or wants to hear from us, and remind it that we'll come back to it at the end of this exercise. That this isn't a one and done. This is work that we want to do. We want to keep getting to know these parts. So when we're ready, we're gonna shift focus to the other hand, the other part. We're gonna ask it the same questions. Just really want to know what does it do for us? What is the job that it has? Why does it do what it does? What wisdom does it have that it wants us to know? What hopes does it have for us, and what fears does it have about us? What is it afraid would happen if it didn't do what it does for us? And maybe asking it, if there's another part that it's protecting. And we wanted to just send this part appreciation and validation, that we appreciate what it does, and what it does makes sense. It makes sense that it wants to protect us from harm. And before we move on, just asking this part if there's anything else that it wants us to know or wants to hear from us. And now, if it feels right, just shifting our focus to both hands, both parts, and making inquiry about what these parts do and who they're protecting. Just noticing, like, are they protecting the same part? Or maybe they're protecting different parts. And checking if these parts are actually aware of each other. Do they know about each other? Are they aware of what the other part has been trying to do on our behalf? And what it's like for them to be meeting in this way? We're gonna end in a minute, but before we do, let's just see if we can name to them the wisdom that each of them brings out loud in this context of just the two parts present to each other and you present to both of them. Just anything that you want to say to these parts, to acknowledge, or even an intention that you want to set. Maybe that you'll do this again in a couple of days or tomorrow. Maybe you want to invite them to stay connected to you, to come down to your hand anytime, whatever feels right. And when you feel complete, go ahead and invite both parts to come back into your body, into whatever place feels right for them. Maybe your heart. And when that's done, ending the inquiry, ending the meditation, it might make sense for you to write down just a few notes about what you heard, the wisdom that these parts shared, as well as any intention that you'd like to set about revisiting these parts in the future. Okay, so we'll end that meditation. And so that's the inner triangle. We walked through two aspects of the inner triangle. First is illuminating the inner triangle, just getting familiar with the parts that are involved. The part that's saying yes, the part that's saying no, the part that's saying speak up, the part that's saying be quiet, whatever's coming up for you, as well as the part that's trying to mediate the whole thing or make the decision. So that's sort of the understanding piece. And then there's the meditation and the inquiry, where instead of grinding our way through a decision, we actually step back and get to know their parts, their motivations, why they are the way they are, what they're trying to achieve, who they're trying to protect, so that we can really kind of understand the stakeholders, our inner stakeholders of these decisions, and even introduce these stakeholders to each other, so that for whatever decision we're facing, we can understand the situation more completely, understand the decision makers more completely, and ultimately move forward the situation, move forward in a way that reflects the wisdom that each of these parts has to offer and doesn't fall into the limiting beliefs or the incomplete information or the fears that these parts have. So that's my hope for you, that this practice is of service in decisions and other tough spots you're facing. I'd love to hear about your experience. If you want to hop on the phone and do this together, I'd be more than happy to do that. So keep me posted. Okay, bye.